You have a memory right now that never actually happened. Not a lie, not a dream. A real memory sitting in your head that is completely false. You believe it anyway. Here is how scientists know. Most people think memory works like a video camera. Something happens, the camera records it exactly, and the recording stays the same forever. That is not how memory actually works. Memory is more like a drawing you redraw from memory every single time you look at it. Each time you remember something, your brain is not playing back a tape. It is rebuilding the memory from small pieces, right there, in that moment. And every time it rebuilds the memory, small pieces can change, without you ever noticing. This is not a small, rare glitch. This happens to every single person, every single day, including you, right now, today. Here is a simple way to picture how memory actually works. Imagine taking a photo, then ripping it into small pieces, then putting the pieces in a drawer. Every time you want to remember the photo, you do not pull out the original. You pull out the torn pieces and tape them back together, right there, in the moment. Most of the time, the pieces go back roughly where they belong. But sometimes, a piece gets taped in slightly wrong, or a piece from a different photo gets mixed in by mistake. You would not necessarily notice. The picture still looks complete to you. That is what happens every time you remember anything, not just big events. Small ones too. What you had for breakfast 3 days ago, a conversation you had last week. All of it goes through the same rebuilding process. None of it is stored perfectly. All of it is rebuilt, imperfectly, every time. In the 1990s, a scientist named Elizabeth Loftus wanted to test this directly. She wanted to know if she could plant a memory in someone's mind. A memory of something that never actually happened. So she ran a simple test. She told people 4 stories about their own childhood. 3 of the stories were true. Family members had confirmed them. But the 4th story was completely made up. A story about getting lost in a shopping mall as a young child. Being scared, crying, and eventually being rescued by an older person. None of that ever happened. But she told the story with real, specific, believable details. Just like the 3 true stories. Then she asked people to try to remember all 4 events, and describe whatever details came to mind. About a quarter of the people did something remarkable. They remembered the fake mall story, not as something they were told, as something they actually remembered happening to them. Some of them even added new details Loftus never gave them. The color of the rescuer's shirt, how frightened they felt. Details about a moment that never existed. When she later told participants which story was fake, some people did not believe her. They argued the memory felt too real to be false. Quick one before we keep going. Think of one very early childhood memory. Are you actually sure it happened exactly the way you remember it? Just think about it. Then let's keep going. Here is where it gets stranger. Loftus did not stop at just planting a false memory. She wanted to know if a false memory could actually change what someone does. So in a later study, she told people a new fake memory, that as a child, they got sick after eating strawberry ice cream. This never happened either. But once people believed it, something interesting happened. At a real event afterward, with real food on the table, many of those people avoided the strawberry ice cream, without ever knowing why. A memory that was never real, changed a real decision, about real food, in real life. That is the part worth sitting with. Not just that memory can be wrong, but that a wrong memory can still quietly steer your life. So what does this actually mean for you? It does not mean your memories are all fake. Most of what you remember is probably close to what actually happened. But somewhere in there, a few details have quietly shifted. A color that was not quite right. A detail that got added later, without you noticing. A moment that 2 people remember completely differently, both convinced they are the one who remembers it right. That is not a character flaw. That is just what memory actually is. A rebuilding, not a recording. Knowing that will not stop your memory from changing. But it might make you a little less certain the next time you argue about exactly how something happened, and a little more patient with people who remember it differently than you do. Here is one more thing worth knowing. The more times you retell a memory, the more chances it has to quietly change. Not because you are trying to lie, just because every retelling is another rebuild, and every rebuild is a small chance for a piece to shift. This is part of why old memories often feel so certain, even when they are wrong. You have simply rebuilt it enough times that it feels solid, even if the version you are holding onto now is not quite the one that started. None of this means you should stop trusting your memory completely. You still need it to function, to learn, to recognize people you love. It just means holding it a little more loosely than you used to. You might be wondering why memory works this way at all. Why not just build a brain that records everything perfectly? It turns out, a perfect recording might actually be worse. Think about how much you experience in a single day. Every sound, every face, Every small, forgettable moment. If your brain stored all of that perfectly, forever, it would run out of room almost immediately. So instead, your brain does something smarter. It keeps the general shape of what happened, and lets go of most of the small details. Then rebuilds the details fresh, each time you need them. This saves enormous space, and most of the time, it works well enough. Good enough to recognize your own home. Good enough to remember how to get to work. Good enough to recognize the people you love, instantly, every time. The system is not broken. It is just built for usefulness, not for perfect accuracy. And usefulness occasionally costs you accuracy, in small, quiet ways. There is something even stranger than one person having a false memory. Sometimes, thousands of people share the exact same false memory, at the same time, with no connection to each other. This is called the Mandela Effect. It is named after Nelson Mandela. In the 1980s, huge numbers of people remembered him dying in prison, clearly, specifically, with real, vivid detail. But that is not what happened. He was released from prison. He became president of his country, and he lived for many more years after that. None of that matched what so many people clearly remembered, and when people were shown the truth, many still felt unsettled, like their own mind had betrayed them. Scientists still do not fully agree on why this happens to so many people at once. One idea is that your brain remembers the general shape of things, and quietly fills in the rest, even when the filled-in part is wrong. And if enough people guess wrong in the same direction, it stops feeling like a guess. It feels like a fact. This is not just an internet trivia game. It shows up in courtrooms too. When someone witnesses a crime, their memory of it is not a recording. It is built afterward, the same way every other memory is built. Researchers studying wrongful convictions found something sobering. In a large share of those cases, the same kind of mistake kept showing up. A confident witness, completely sure of what they saw, describing a memory that turned out to be wrong. Being sure and being right are not the same thing. Memory does not feel uncertain when it is wrong. It feels exactly the same as memory that is right. That is the part that should make you pause. One more before we close. Is there a memory you and someone else in your life have always disagreed about? Maybe now you know why. Let's finish this. So, your memory is fake. Not all of it. Just enough of it to matter. Your brain is not lying to you on purpose. It is just doing the only thing it knows how to do. Rebuilding the past, a little differently, every single time you ask it to. That is not something to be afraid of. It is just something worth knowing. If this changed how you think about your own memories, share it with someone you have argued with about the past. Subscribe to AVM. We ask the questions you stopped asking a long time ago.